Hello again. Welcome to another episode of The Works. This is Jim.
I'm Diane.
So, exciting news. I've got some folks lined up as guests in upcoming episodes. Plus, I think we're going to have to finally bite the bullet and do the YouTube thing. Even if we're just setting up a camera that's looking at both of us, looking at each other, talking, I think we need to do that. And the reason I say that is the AI information I'm getting from YouTube is phenomenal. So here's a snippet. So first of all, I'm going to take the advice of YouTube's AI. I'm going to name this particular episode something with either boobs or doomed, or maybe just something clever that's topical.
Trending word.
Well, so it's funny you bring that up, and I'll segue into that in a second. And I'm doing this based on the fact that the AI has suggested, based on our last conversation, we titled the episode "Social Security is Doomed." Now, AI tells us, or at least this is the solid advice that it gives us, the Social Security is Doomed episode is outperforming your typical benchmarks for views and click-to-view ratios with an average duration higher than most of your other episodes, showing that the dramatic, high-stakes topic effectively captures your audience's attention.
Oh.
Isn't that brilliant?
Yeah.
I'm being sarcastic. It also goes on to saying, your melodramatic intro successfully transitioned from a bleak financial outlook to relatable career pivots, a theme that likely resonates with your 50-plus demo and keeps your listeners watching well above the average.
Huh.
Now, of course, several things, because we did talk about demo. Not until after December will it be official that we can talk to Brittany and the demo that she will now be a part of. But after we were talking about the demos, and yeah, I don't know how it gleans this information. Part of it, to me, I hate to say this is corporate CIO bullshit speak, where they're just saying words.
Mm-hmm.
Your melodramatic intro successfully transitioned from a bleak financial outlook to relatable career pivots. When did that come up?
I don't know. Apparently, we're exciting.
So, to your point about using trending words, so here I go again on Google. So, there is apparently a story, and I missed this. So, one of the biggest things being that's trending or searched on this week is Lorna Hajidi.
Who?
Okay. Right.
Sure.
So, and forgive me if I'm mispronouncing, but apparently earlier this week, Lorna Hajidi went to work. Unbeknownst to her this entire time, there had been memes that had been forming because one of her coworkers, an executive, had claimed that he was sexually harassed by her. And specifically because he was fired or something to that effect. But his story, he filed a lawsuit in New York County Supreme Court accusing her of drugging him with what's the Rupadol?
Yeah, the date rape drug.
So now this is all going on in India, by the way. So and it's J.P. Morgan, which again is amazing. So, but here's the story that again, it's the number one topic trending on Google this week. So I don't know where the hell I am. So I don't know if we're going to, I have one word. I have a couple of words here that I think we're going to use as the title because it could be fun to see what AI does to us. But the real story is that this guy that worked for her, apparently he's accused her of drugging him, forcing him into sex acts, and calling him his little Arab toy boy.
Wow.
Threatening to destroy his career if he didn't comply. And again, this brings up this cliche thing. I know maybe, again, this is my generation. And I don't want to get into a Me Too thing, but anytime, a woman comes on to a man, is it really that bad? I mean, forced us to do what? Oh, okay, gosh, golly gee, right? But anyway, right. So he said that at one point, and this is part of his affidavit or his lawsuit, that she had showed up uninvited at his apartment, removed her shirt, insulted his wife's ethnicity, and forced herself onto him while he cried.
Ich, poo.
Oh, yeah, yucky. Get that now. But apparently some other news outlets have been on this story the entire week. Again, forgive us for not catching this. This is big news. And here's where, again, I think I'm going to title the episode. According to some of the other news episodes, they got a hold of what she said to him, this ethnic.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently what he said that she said was, as he was crying, "Your little Asian fish head wife doesn't have these cannons." That's when she rips her shirt off. That's awesome. Now, again, do you really believe
Not
that?
the slur, but, calling her boobs cannons. That's awesome.
That's a slur? Oh, it's the Asian fish head thing that's the slur.
Yes.
Okay. Never. Well,
yeah.
I'm just repeating what's in the, again, number one trending thing, talking about these cannons. So, gaming the system, maybe we'll call the episode. I don't know, or something to that effect. But that interesting to me. That we'll see what AI does with, but that's a real story. Not that was really going to be the topic today, but cannons.
He
So
hates these cans.
Yeah, a couple of things that we had talked about earlier and people, of course, now get to run rampant with the conspiracy theories, but there have been a lot of earthquakes around Area 51 in the last 24 or 48 hours, and everyone's going crazy about what are they testing, what sort of technology is going on in Area 51.
And did any aliens escape?
Well, and we've watched our fair share of Area 51 conspiracy documentaries. I think there's the most recent one that a lot of them hold your attention, or at least hold my attention to a certain point. But the latest one from Netflix is about a guy that was hired to work at Area 51, right?
To reverse engineer.
Right, and
alien technology.
And what what alien technology was it? It was the propulsion system for how the craft itself moved. And again, it had something that he finally came to the conclusion, after I don't know how long it took them to reverse engineer, or at least come to the understanding of that the sphere thing, right? It was all about gravity and time, is what made the thing move the way it moved, the way the Earth ship, or the ship itself, moved when it came into our orbit gravity. I don't know, when it came to visit us.
Yeah.
So so lots of stories. Well, again, now maybe we'll hear more of them, or have some new conspiracy theories brought up about Area 51. But the fact that there's a lot of earthquakes, but there have been a lot of earthquakes, and it finally, I think they all realized that all that fracking that's going on in Texas and Kansas and Nebraska, and isn't that's still the root of a lot of the smaller earthquakes that are happening? The smaller
ones, yes.
In the middle of the country. But apparently Reno now, who doesn't normally experience earthquakes, is experiencing a ton of them. Again, is it related? Is it unrelated? Who knows? And then somebody said, or again, part of the article that was talking about the Area 51, that they discovered another fault. And of course, it just makes me wonder at this stage how many things that we think that we've nailed, right? All the complexities of what science has done, but yet we've missed a fault. And again, I don't know if it was out west. I didn't finish the article. I guess that's the whole point of this story.
Like plates fault, earthquake fault, that type of thing.
That kind of fault. So yeah, we'll see if Area 51 comes up anytime soon in the trending. One thing I was going to bring up was, because I don't know why I was thinking about this the other day, but what was the best or most unique or most outrageous piece of advice that you'd ever got? I mean, I pose that to anyone. So I mean, love to hear what others, piece of advice that just stands out. Now, so as examples that I had thought of, but there is one in particular that I think, as I allude to it, you might catch up to what I'm going. But one of the most outrageous pieces of advice that we were ever given as a couple, at least I think, was outrageous to me, clever as hell. You and I had seen a couple of psychologists dealing with your mother's, in essence, dealing with the whole psyche around how to deal with your mother.
Right.
And not to get too much into your mother's issues, but we were conveying that we're letting her affect us too much. And whether it's narcissism or bipolar or manic or whatever,
borderline
right?
personality disorder.
We would express more particularly you, but I certainly would express the outward visceral hurt that sometimes just came from what was really just childish behavior on her part.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, I'm not trying to be mean, and then the psychologist started to recant a story about how they dealt with their mother, because he and his siblings had a very similar situation. And again, maybe he was placating us. Maybe this is out of the psychologist's playbook, but a fantastic story nonetheless. I don't know if you remember or have an idea where I'm going with this, but the story that he recanted to us, because his bottom line with us the entire time is you can't deal with crazy, And again, I hate to say that you cut your mother out or you cut the crazy out of your life, but as he then explained how things come to a head is he and his siblings had issues dealing with their mother, and they were visiting with their mother one day during the year, and they were shopping or somewhere, I don't know, a gift store, and she had made a comment about some towels that she liked but didn't necessarily get, and so the kids, thought how cute it would be to go back and maybe get those towels for her for Christmas, because she had commented that she, expressed some interest in them. And lo and behold, they did. And it's a sweet gift, or at least to me, in my opinion, sweet thought, right? That's the whole idea of giving a gift. It doesn't have to come in a Tiffany's box and be expensive to be meaningful. However, so Christmas comes around, and mom and the kids are over, and we're talking kids that are grown, our age, right? The siblings, and mom opens the gift, and she sees it's, these towels that I don't know if she remembered. I don't know if that was the part of the story, but she opened it and looked at the towels and was very upset. And, the kids were hoping for some at least better, sweet, response. But mom basically looks and says, you might as well just give me a gun and kill myself. Because, again, she hated the towels, right? And the point of the story was he told us the next year or the next gift-giving season or whatever it was, they wrapped up a gun and gave it to her. And the point there is you can't deal with crazy.
Right.
That was the advice. Of course, I'm thinking, where do I go get a gun and put it in a box for your mom? But the point was... Well,
and his other point is, dog is going to bark. If you don't want to hear the dog barking, then don't be around the dog. Don't be upset that the dog is barking.
Well, that was the whole point about cut crazy out.
Yeah. Right. When you're around somebody that's crazy, then don't be surprised that you get that behavior. You can't pretend to be hurt because you knew it was coming. So you either...
But it's different every time for whatever reason. And see, that was... And obviously it's still kind of a sore spot for the both of us. You've dealt with and deal with things differently as you've recanted the crazy stories that you've had to put up with, and others that have been in your life, friends, acquaintances, some have done exactly what he had suggested, not put a gun in a box, but cut the crazy out.
Right.
And they've been happy ever since. And I'm not saying that's good advice. Again, the question was posed, and would love to hear anyone else's comments. What's the most, I guess in this case, to me, this was the most memorable advice that I had ever got. Not directly give a gun, but the fact that it was, hey, if you're going to call bullshit on something. And, I thought that was, piece of memorable advice, I guess, from my perspective.
Right. Or maybe it was career advice.
Well, that's what I'm asking.
That type of advice.
So as I vamp, and I was trying to give you some time to maybe think of one. Another, again, something simple and innocent. Like I'm always constantly reminded of what my father would say to me is like, if if you're not going to do it right, don't do it at all. And that piece of advice, from what I remember, it always came after the fact that I did something. Of course, that's when it's more meaningful, I think. I think that was his point, right? If you're not going to do it right, don't do it at all. But, it's a project. Is it cutting the grass? Did I miss a spot? And he said, I guess it's one of those, to me, it's almost that same generic CIO, CTO sort of speak when, you're making up words because you want to be a clever linguist and motivate people. But what does that really mean? If you're not going to do it right, don't do it at all.
Right. Then you get in trouble if you decide you don't want to do it.
That's the thing.
Then don't be a smartass. Well, I'd rather be a smartass than a dumbass. That gets you in trouble. That's not a good one to say.
Yeah. So the advice thing, I guess, is, and maybe maybe it was more generational then. Maybe it was the fact that, growing up, Generation X, we grew up typically in a normal, Leave It to Beaver household where, mom and dad were always there. Except, we were starting to get into that, what we called the latchkey kid generation, when all of a sudden divorce wasn't such a bad thing. Well, hell, we just passed, there's a billboard in South Carolina that was it, life's too short, divorce is the answer, or something.
Life's too short, get a divorce.
But that, and maybe that sort of homespun wisdom or advice came out of the fact that you and I both grew up in, well, again, quasi-normal. The relationship I had with my father, the fact that
he was
there. And again, it's not that he wasn't there because he didn't want to, but it was a work choice, And back then, and it's interesting, again, we were talking about jobs the other day. The notion of a traveling salesperson or he was a traveling technical person for Pillsbury, if anybody remembers that brand. They're not called Pillsbury anymore, but I think they use that logo to sell flour and certain products. And that's where he was gone all the time. But that thing of having to be somewhere, again, in the technology world that we live in, is truly obsolete, right?
Right.
I mean, what's the reason to go on site? Look at, for example, his world was the pastry side of things. So he had, one of his clients was Entenmann's, and Pillsbury sold the ingredients, and he would make sure that the Entenmann's, whatever it was running right, coming off the line right. And again, kind of a clever job.
Right. And he knew just by the taste of it what was going wrong.
Right. Well, and then he started to
until
understand.
the diabetes hit. That's not
well,
funny.
I don't know if it's, well, no, I don't know if it's a function of what, the poor guy was doing, but, at the same time, is this part of the assembly line moving too fast? Is it proofing too much? Is it, and, a lot, but that was another thing that never happened is, what'd your father really do? I mean, and maybe in my case it was tough because, the classic I would remember is he'd come home, it's late Friday or Saturday, Dad, you want to go golfing? You want to go do this? This is, just, of course, Mom, leave him alone. He's tired. And I can understand that. But, you accept it, you understand it. At the same time, I guess all those things that when you're growing up, that you want to learn, or not necessarily you don't want to learn, but you're forced to learn, that your father goes on about this, that, and the other. And I experienced that with our daughter, because we've been in IT, and anytime there's an IT situation in the home, recently replaced my router, my mesh router system. Oh my God, that was a nightmare. You would have thought that I'd strangled, you would have thought that I turned half the internet off because nothing worked the same way. And it was just basically, it's new and we have a hard time with new things. But as I would try to explain it and take the time to do what I guess maybe I wanted to have done to me,
right.
I guess in retrospect, my father was a lot smarter because it's a waste of time. There's no point. There's no point in sharing. I mean, in this generation, today.
Yeah, you're doing it wrong.
Oh, you're doing everything wrong. But, so again, back to the advice topic is Even like I said, is there a piece of advice you got from a coworker, from a friend, any other than those two that kind of stood out to me about?
Yeah, drop us a note in the comments. Email us at Diane at the Works Podcast or Jim at the workspodcast.com. Let us know.
But I was hinting more to you. You don't.
Oh, I can't come up with anything.
Really? Okay. All right. Nothing. I mean, so for example, speaking of parents, so as I'm getting to know your parents and ask your father about what he did, and we kind of talked about it. He worked at Boeing. But see, that's the problem. Go ahead. Do you have one?
I have a great one. My dad says when you have double vision when you're drunk driving.
Oh God, this isn't advice. It's just okay. Yes, but
I know.
Yeah, this is a good one.
He learned that you should close your left eye because the passenger in the car could see if you close your right eye. So
the point is that if you've drunk, you shouldn't be driving, but you're driving. This is what we all did in the 70s and 80s, right? Apparently.
Right.
And so, and he's
isn't that great?
And he's been known to tip a few, as they say.
Yeah.
Every day, constantly. It's 5 o'clock somewhere. That's what his generation. But his point was, again, great advice.
Yeah. Close this eye, not this eye.
If you're seeing double while you're driving,
close
one eye, and it does work.
Yeah,
but the real advice is to make sure you close the right one because you don't want your passenger to be freaked out.
Be terrified. Yeah.
Which, of course, I guess brings up that funny story that I heard. Well, I guess I was going down the path, so I asked your father likewise. Trying to build some closeness and whatnot, and asked him what he did for Boeing, and I really still to this day don't know, and I don't think you know either. I don't think many people, that generation, again, it was not a sharing generation.
Mm-mm.
You never got anything out of them. Even if you asked, or if you did ask point blank, I mean, the answer that I would get a lot of times is, well, sometimes we just don't talk about those things.
Right. He had an accounting degree, and then he was a project manager, or he was logistics.
But see, that's just
I don't know what logistics mean.
He did say to me, or at least what I can remember, was he handled the budget for, what was it, the B1, the B2, whatever the
OV-10.
Okay, what is that? Is that a plane?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm thinking, wow, that's a big project. How big was the budget? Couldn't get an answer. And maybe he was under strict orders not to give that confidential information out, or I'm kidding, but you couldn't get anything out of him when it came down to asking that question. But so that was completing that thought. And forgive me, the other fun story about your father that shocks me is they were drinking and you were involved at some bar on High Street, right, campus area at Ohio State, and he comes out and he's rooting through a car because he's throwing shit out the window and the door, and his car was filthy and he was upset, right? I mean, so how did that go? He was cleaning out a car, and he was upset that his car got that dirty. And the punchline is, go ahead. And
it wasn't his car.
Wasn't his car. So he was rooting through somebody else's car.
Yeah, who put this shit in here? Yeah.
And indeed
it wasn't on campus. It was when they lived in Florida. But yeah, it's the same thing.
Sure. I guess he could have, probably should have closed one eye.
Yeah.
Maybe things would have been better. But so yeah, the no other advice pieces that you can think of, or anything from that generation that we've not.
I don't. And nobody really imparted any words of wisdom to me. I don't know if they expected me to not try, if they expected me to succeed, or just wing it. I don't know.
Even teacher. I mean, nothing. I mean, I know your one story about divine intervention and going back to OSU the second time, and what. But again, are these pieces of advice? Is it karma? What is it that makes you remember that event that, for whatever reason, changed things for you? It was, again, like I said, the piece of advice about, how to deal with crazy. Not that we ever took any of his advice, or at least I know you didn't. But
no. Yeah. The definition of crazy is, going back and doing the same thing and expecting different results. So the crazy was on me because I kept expecting different results. But
well, right, you're playing the peacemaker role, I guess, for lack of a better, and that never worked out, and sadly, but and the sad part is you keep trying. I guess I would be interested to know those that took that advice, how much better off. I know from my perspective, and I hate to use the word crazy again, but all families, there's that dysfunction at some point. And how do you continue that? And from my perspective, it's just not. Why are we chasing something that nobody is interested in playing along with? I don't know. It's and then unfortunately you put alcohol in the situation, and that just amplifies everything 10 times worse than it is.
Yeah, good times.
And we've talked about vacation.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about, well, I guess that's another question is, in the old days, you would, you'd go to a destination, whether it's Disney World or a theme park or amusement park or a fair. And, the accommodations were, it was almost second nature that you were staying in a hotel. No one really thought of the idea of, and you and I kind of equated
renting a house.
The notion of timeshare, or in today's world, the
Airbnb,
the Vrbo, the short-term rental of somebody else's home, and that's really turned into a whole industry. Again, there's another job that no one's really thought of, but that's a whole industry all in itself. Is now that taking the luxury, but there's still something about being in somebody else's home versus a hotel. You just don't feel the same. I don't know. And again, maybe it's my age, maybe it's what I'm used to, but you can never really feel super comfortable. Why? I have no idea. I'm not saying you trash a hotel room, but you just feel, you feel like you leave it less dirty.
Right.
In a hotel, you just, hey, that's part of someone's got to come in and reboot the room, so to speak.
Well, with the rental places, it is interesting now because it was such a boon market that you now have neighborhoods like your daughter's neighborhood that they crack down, that you can't.
Well, the HOAs are upset.
Yeah,
because
in a lot there were some of these neighborhoods, there were so many Airbnb and VRBO. It was disrupting the neighborhood, the family vibe of the neighborhood. So they've cracked down on that.
And I guess that is a good point. But so where in the and this is it's a fun topic. HOA and and we're fortunate because where we're at, there's no such thing. And yes, I guess the governance of the development that was built where we're at talked about it, but there's no official HOA. And I feel bad for all these places that have those types of rules. And of course, the horror stories of oh my God, your fence. There's a good series on HBO. What is it? Something called My Neighbors or Good Neighbors.
Yeah.
That it's
their disputes.
Yeah, about. And again, basic things that you would think, to me, if you want to put up a fence and it's a little different than your neighbors, I don't have a problem with it. The HOAs always seem to have a problem with it because it's a conformity issue, right? Hell, we had a situation where the HOA would monitor to make sure that you pulled your trash cans back.
Yeah.
But by a certain time, or you'd get in trouble for that. And get in trouble for what? And of course, then it begs the question is, why do we have somebody that has so much time on their hands that they're driving around to make sure everybody's freaking
trash cans are back?
And if you're going to do that, tell you what, the fee that you're paying for a HOA, get out of the effing car and move it back for me, as opposed to doing what you're doing and just irritating everyone. I mean, what are you paying for in these situations? And it's interesting you bring that up because a lot of these, what I have found, there was one reason, I don't know why I was flipping, but there was a bunch of families, and maybe that's the issue, is the rental of these places, and they're gorgeous, right? Their investment, certainly some people live in them off season, if you will, if it's in a a beachy sort of area.
Mm-hmm.
But what ends up happening is that these folks are trying to make a lot of money while they're not there. And part of it, let's face it, I'm not sure. Do insurance companies realize that they have other people than the owners of the home living in the home? And then what's the insurance aspect or the liability of that? My point, though, is that I was watching a video of somebody making, it was a vacation gift, and they had a one of those beverage dispenser plastic things, with a little nozzle thing on the bottom of it. But it was, of course empty, but they filled it up with these, every sort of different alcohol you can think of. And it was just nasty. I mean, it was the booze boyer, booze balls and bing bongs and, Monster. And the idea was, and they poured all these different types of alcohol and, hard liquor, wine, beer, sweet things. And then threw ice in it, and then they were all drinking it. And of course, this is all in the, in a house that they're renting. Would they do that in their own home? I guess that's just it. I come from that generation where you just don't do that if it's another person's home, because you at least think, and I've always wondered this. A lot of places have security systems. A lot of places have cameras, and I know it's always mentioned in the agreement that there is video surveillance going on, but there's nothing. They're not watching for you. They're just watching
the property.
But
right,
let's face
only
it.
on the outside.
But let's face it. If there's a camera, which this last place we were at, there was just it dawned on me after the fact that there's a camera pointing right at the hot tub.
Yeah.
That could be fun.
Yeah.
To watch. Hell, maybe if I go do some Google searching on
cannons and hot tubs.
Yeah, I'll see ours, and not necessarily. Yeah. That's okay. I guess we're talked out.
Alrighty.
Okay. Well, until we get it together again. Oh, and again, just a quick reminder. We're going to do the YouTube thing, stick a camera up and do this live. As a matter of fact, we do this live. We do this, not that you're listening to it live and, of course, can replay it, and it's us sitting there wanting to play it again for you.
But there aren't edits along the way.
It's,
you get what you get. You don't get upset.
Oh, speaking of which, we discovered a new game show that you play.
Oh, the Netflix one?
Yeah. The clues are ridiculous, but, it's fun. It's
I
20
almost
minutes.
got one right.
Well, yeah. Well, we both almost did recently. We just had the wrong type of we were thinking along the same lines, but yeah, that's clever. I can't think of what it's called right now, but it's on 8 o'clock Eastern, and there's an app for it. There's an app for everything. But yeah, we'll have to get into this YouTube thing. We've got a couple experts that want to challenge and have a discussion around some of the things that we've brought up recently, and in particular, the job market and how to, what that's going to look like, the concept of and the topics that we've had recently about the platforms, the podcast, the social media. It's truly a form of entertainment that more and more people are not just creating, but consuming, and it's becoming a bigger and bigger thing. You and I were joking about it. Seems like every freaking celebrity has a podcast. Well, how do you compete when you're not a celebrity against that? And my point, if you have something interesting, long story short, we're proud that we've captured the attention of others that want to add to that conversation, because I've certainly would love to have others ask. I'd love to ask questions, and we've said also.
Yeah, I think we found a couple good people.
Yeah, and some of our personal crushes, if you will, the YouTube's stars that you can't call them stars. This social media people, that influencers that we both enjoy watching. We'd love to have them on and ask them questions and share experiences and share what they do and how they got into it is I think part of what I'm interested in learning. You and I got into this because we've talked about that other career that when you're at our age, I've had enough time in the one that I've just spent 30 years in. I'm not interested in it anymore. So making a decision. What do you do next, or how?
Right.
This is the time people transition into something.
Right.
I'm not transitioning into that.
Yeah.
That's a whole other issue.
Or, if it's a hobby, and maybe a hobby can turn into a second career. So,
well, I mean, we often thought that some of the goofy conversations that we've had, hey, I'd love to go back and listen to those again, and or is it entertaining enough? And that's what we're discovering. And certainly one of the things that I've wrestled with as we've done this is, how much prep do we put into it? Because it is important to come into it, each conversation, with something that, set of guidelines. And again, I hate to say it, I jokingly, I write down my ad libs. Can't do that. But at least a framework of what we're going to talk about and what sort of, but there's also spontaneity and
let the freestyle go.
Yeah, I mean, certainly. And then, but yeah. So I looking forward to, and if anyone has advice on how to integrate video with your podcast, because we're not really a video thing, but because that's not going to play on Spotify and the other ones. But as a matter of fact, it can. It can.
I told you.
I understand that. It's a matter of the setup that I have here. We only set this up to do audio. It's not
Correct.
that I can't, integrate video. As a matter of fact, what might end up happening is that's live. Yes, we could do live and then hold it privately and then let it go, but that's live, and that's how that part of it works. It's not that I couldn't record this and,
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
I don't know. Probably not, according to my daughter. I have no clue what I'm doing in technology. I'm going to keep doxing myself. I still don't know what that means.
Me neither.
I didn't think anybody saw me when I doxed myself.
You'll go
I closed
blind.
the door. Yeah, well, that is true. Until next time, this has been Jim
and Diane.
And you've been listening to another episode of The Works.